Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a case that absolutely shook the Maharashtra Police Department from the inside out. It's a story that starts with a totally normal everyday morning routine, and it ends with a betrayal so deep it really forces us to question the very fabric of family. We're going to unpack the chilling details of the milkshake murder, a case where the truth was literally buried for 3 years under this facade of perfect innocence.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the tragic irony here is almost difficult to process. We are looking at a scenario where a father's deep, fiercely protective love for his child directly resulted in his own assassination, and it was carried out by that very child. It takes this wholesome morning act, a daughter handing her dad a freshly made milkshake before he heads off to work, and transforms it into a cold-blooded weapon.
Just look at how this timeline played out. In April 2023, Jan suddenly dies. Fast forward just a few months to October 2023, and his daughter Arya is living this completely carefree, very public life on Instagram. And then there's just this massive 3-year gap where absolutely nothing happens. The case is cold, the death is considered totally natural. It isn't until March 2026 that the entire facade finally comes crashing down. So for 3 whole years, a murderer lived perfectly hidden in plain sight.
Section 1. A shocking confession. So everything unravels in late March 2026. This guy, Ashish Shedmak, walks into the Ramnagar police station. And he doesn't just give a standard statement, right? He completely destroys a lie that an entire community and the police force itself had believed for 3 years. He confesses that his father-in-law's death wasn't some sudden tragedy or a heart failure. It was murder.
Before we really get into the mechanics of the crime, we need to understand who the victim was. Jayant Balawar was a 45-year-old head constable at the Chandrapur City Police Station, and he was known as this fiercely dedicated, protective father to his 19-year-old daughter, Arya. On April 25, 2023, he felt a little uneasy leaving for work, went to his duty, collapsed, and later died in the hospital. Because the initial postmortem showed absolutely no signs of foul play, his family, including a weeping Arya, gave him his final rites, completely believing his heart had just given out.
Let's move to Section 2, Anatomy of a Murder, and see how this builds. Talk about a fatal disconnect. Look at Jan's perspective first. As a police officer, he saw the dark side of society every single day. So when he sees his daughter constantly glued to her phone and sneaking out to meet a boy, his protective instincts kick in. He imposes strict rules to keep her safe. But look at Arya's perspective. She grew up spoiled, totally used to instant gratification. So she didn't see love or protection. She saw this suffocating attack on her independence. She felt completely caged.
But here's the thing. The motive wasn't just your standard teenage rebellion or being mad about curfews. It was driven by cold, hard greed. Ashish, the guy Arya was seeing, had recently secured a police job on compassionate grounds after his own father passed away. And that planted a massive seed in Arya's mind. By eliminating her father, she wouldn't just get her freedom. She'd literally inherit his secure government job. It was exactly what this quote says, a dangerous association where death was seen as an opportunity.
And this brilliantly illustrates the cold, calculated chain of events that followed, because this was absolutely not a crime of passion. It was basically a supply chain. Step 1, Ashish comes up with the idea for a poison that mimics natural illness, so it avoids post-mortem detection. Step 2, he reaches out to his minor cousin, a 13 or 14-year-old kid in Bhadravati who hangs around the wrong crowd. Step 3, that cousin connects them to a guy named Monty, who supplies the poison for just 5,000 rupees. And finally, step 4, Arya calmly takes that poison and spikes the milkshake she serves her dad for breakfast.
Section 3, The Toxic Fallout. You guys, the sheer audacity of how Arya lived after the murder is just staggering. Barely 1 month after wiping out her father, she marries Ashish, but she doesn't even move in with him. She stays in her maiden home, soaking up her new, restriction-free life. By October 2023, she's all over Instagram. She's flexing Maharashtra Police in her bio, calling herself a microbiologist, traveling, going to parties, posting romantic videos. I mean, she had literal blood on her hands, yet she was living out loud online, completely without remorse, all while quietly processing the paperwork to take her dead father's job.
But, a relationship built on the foundation of murder is pretty much bound to crumble. By late 2025, the power dynamic entirely flips. Arya's police training is going incredibly well, her confidence swells into total arrogance, and she actually starts viewing Ashish as a burden. Meanwhile, Ashish's life is totally falling apart. He gets fired from his police probation for indiscipline and misconduct. He feels useless, frustrated, and completely rejected by the woman he had just helped become a killer.
So the crucial point is this. Ashish's confession to the police in 2026, it was not born out of some sudden wave of moral guilt. Not at all. It was purely born out of a bruised ego. After this massive fight where Arya belittled him and made him feel worthless, Ashish realized he was losing everything while she was out there succeeding. His mindset shifted to pure revenge. He basically decided, if I go down, you're going down with me.
Let's dive a little deeper into Section 4, Psychology of the Crime.
The act of killing one's father is known as patricide. Historically and psychologically, patricide usually happens in extreme cases of long-term abuse, right? Where the killer feels like their literal survival is at stake. But that was absolutely not the case here. There was no survival threat whatsoever. This was driven purely by a desire for calculated control, sheer entitlement, and some really deep psychological distortion.
To commit an act like this and actually sleep soundly at night, Arya employed something called moral disengagement. This is the psychological process where a person intentionally justifies their own unacceptable behavior just to avoid feeling guilt. It's incredibly dangerous because a person literally rewrites the rules in their own head. Arya convinced herself that she wasn't committing this horrific murder. She was just, doing what was necessary to secure her freedom and her future career. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the concept of cognitive distortion. Arya's mind fundamentally changed how she viewed Jayant. He was no longer a human being. He was no longer her loving dad. He was converted into a mere obstacle in her path. And psychology tells us that once you view someone simply as a problem to be solved rather than a human being, your empathy automatically switches off. And guys, without empathy, literally any crime becomes possible. So, you end up with this perfect, terrifying storm. 3 colliding factors that turned a 19-year-old girl into an assassin. First, unchecked desires stemming from a childhood of instant gratification. When she finally faced a real boundary, she just couldn't handle it. Second, weak emotional regulation. Instead of solving a conflict, she chose to just eliminate the source of it entirely. And third, immediate opportunity via bad influences. Through Ashish and his shady connections, the means to commit the murder were literally handed right to her. But we also have to highlight a massive failure on the part of the system here. The tragic reality is that if the police department had just done their due diligence, this wouldn't have been a 3-year secret. If Jayant's visceral samples had been properly collected and sent for timely forensic testing right after his sudden death, traces of that poison would almost certainly have been found. It was pure police negligence that let his killers walk free for years. The number 28 is absolutely critical here. On March 28, 2026, literally just days after Arya proudly posted on social media about completing her police training, the law finally caught up with her. Thanks to Ashish's spiteful confession, Ramnagar police swooped in. They arrested Arya, Ashish, Monty the supplier, and sent the minor cousin to juvenile custody. The entire house of cards collapsed in an instant, which leaves us with this final, genuinely chilling thought to consider. If a lethal combination of unchecked greed, entitlement, and bad influence can turn a daughter against the father who spent his entire life protecting her, how well do we truly know what the people closest to us are capable of? It's a dark question for sure, but one this case forces us to ask. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive in today's Explainer. Stay curious, stay observant, and I'll see you next time.